What? Like a handgun, personal protection. What if somebody tries to mug you? What? What if your government tries to throw you in a can? What? You're gonna want a shotgun. What? An automatic rifle and a lot of ammo. Good.
We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They'll burn you out like a Waco. They'll stick your ass in a camp. Check for the cops in riot gear. Gonna kick your ass and laugh. The revolution is on its way. Better lock and load your AK. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. We're all set to riot. Buy a gun before you lose your Second Amendment. Buy a gun. They gave your money to the banksters. They stole your pension funds. It's time that we took to the streets. It's time we had our turn. A revolution is on its way, and the founding fathers would say, buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Buy a gun, 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 buy a gun before you wish you bought a gun. Get a riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You got a riot in the streets. Revolution's not clean and neat. You gotta drag them through the streets.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is Tuesday. We are live. This is PrimerTime on UCY.tv. My name is Michael, and I am full of enthusiasm tonight.
My name is Nicholas, and I did not get fired by the new DNC chair.
Ah, you are an employed member of society. Thank you. Your taxes are greatly appreciated.
Yep. So that's an interesting thing. You know, we were talking a little bit before the show about cleaning house and what Trump should have done, and it seems like the purge is in effect for the DNC.
It looks like it. Tom Perez is the new DNC chairperson tonight. Looks like he fired all incumbent DNC staffers.
Yeah, I mean, and then when you think about it, what exactly does a staffer do over there other than exactly what they're told to do?
So looks like these staffers are, the people who answer the phone calls and try and aggregate data for them and make media outreach and such. And these people have all been fired, and they are bringing in a whole brand new round of Bolsheviks for us to deal with. So, yeah.
I mean, isn't that would any of these people who have been fired possibly been involved in generating poll numbers for the last election?
That's a very, very real possibility. I mean, we saw that the polls were completely unreliable. I mean, there's more than a couple videos on YouTube that are, each one of them is more than 10 minutes long, and it's a compendium of the election cycle. Trump has no chance. So, yeah, these numbers are all kinds of goofy, but.
Yep. So I mean, it's possible that the reason to fire these people is part of a little bit of fallout from the post-election craziness that's going on within their party.
Well, I think the post-election craziness was kind of a very light prelude as to what we have now. I mean, right now it's an absolute hysteria, and people actually believing that Trump was not wiretapped. Where the hell? What planet have you been living on for the last year? Last 2 years? Last 3 years? Last 5 years? Last 12 years? Well, seriously.
Yeah, certainly. It wasn't Maxine Waters. Wasn't this the same representative who said that President Obama has compiled the largest domestic surveillance program and then realized what she said?
Right, and not only that, but I mean, but didn't Dianne Feinstein complain about she was being wiretapped by the NSA or the CIA or somebody, and it was a complete moral outrage, and if it happened to her, well, of course not to Trump. I mean, they turned that off. They monitor everybody else except for Trump. So
Yeah, of course. So yeah, it's interesting. But eventually, what it comes to is their past actions, at least within the Democratic committee, when it came to getting Obamacare passed, about how they bypassed, the other side of the aisle to get
you have to
get
pass the
rammed through.
bill to see what's in it.
Exactly. Well, that may end up coming up to bite them in the butt because depending upon how the projected 7th of April vote for the Supreme Court Justice nominee Neil Gorsuch goes, the Republicans may pull a little bit of that on their own and decide to go ahead and stick it to the Democrats with his nomination.
Well, and that's an interesting subject because last week we discussed Gorsuch's testimony, and before the show I hadn't had a chance to see it, and I did watch it almost immediately after the show, and it was fairly telling. And we saw with Senator Feinstein's attempts at trying to ascertain Gorsuch's personal position on firearms and maybe as to whether or not he was malleable to her position. And he was strong with he follows the law. His personal opinions have nothing to do with it. Now, that's what the man says and all, but that is the correct answer. And I did see that there was a couple more days of the exact same line of questioning going on. And I don't know if you got a chance to see any of the second and third round of that. Pretty much the same kind of questions.
Yeah, it's interesting. They were, I think the Democrats were really shooting themselves in the foot trying to really paint this guy as a jurist who, operated so far outside the mainstream, just by the fact that he said that his job is to, not come down on any one side. It's to look at the facts objectively and then rule from there. And I think that for them that was such a foreign concept that just was unacceptable.
And I find that the anti-gun, the usual suspects in the anti-gun crowd, or the anti-gun tribe is probably better known as, are the ones with the biggest voices shouting for the filibuster. And,
right, yeah.
I'll tell you, I've got some misgivings about what's coming up for the future of this nation. And I will say right now, people like Chuck Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, Barbara Boxer, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as Representative Steve King, Representative Steve Israel, Representative Tom Cotton, all these guys they're not working for us. They are not working for the benefit of the people of the United States of America. They have a different leader.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well,
and it's becoming quite obvious to anybody who's paying any kind of attention.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's talk about the latest losers of the Oklahoma quick draw competition.
All right, better known as "Do not bring brass knuckles to a gunfight."
Yeah, brass knuckles or a knife to a fight with somebody armed with an AR-15.
Right. So this is in what city in Oklahoma was it?
Outside of Tulsa.
Outside of Tulsa. Young 15-year-old male was at home, fluent and proficient in the language of the AR-15 and America's Freedom caliber, was accosted by three males dressed in black, armed with brass knuckles, knives, and other blunt instruments and stabby instruments of terror. Broke into his home. The 15-year-old resident of the home, son of the homeowner, responded with an AR-15, dropped two of them inside the kitchen. One stumbled out and hit the driveway where he assumed the room temperature position.
And it would have been the out of room temperature.
That's right. None of these men survived their attempts. We've got some very interesting journalism that's going along with this. And Well, we've seen that. Well, as President Trump said, you are fake news, and then we've changed it. You are very fake news. There's a lot of
it's interesting. This actually occurred outside of Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. So this is Wagoner County. The female who was the accomplished slash getaway driver, what did you say? She'd been in charge with 3 counts of attempted murder, or 3 counts of murder?
Three. She's been charged with 3 counts of murder as as an accomplice to the accident. We see that in other states. Arizona has pretty much a similar statute. If you decide you're going to go and rob a liquor store with a buddy, and your buddy gets caught or gets killed, and you survive, well, you get charged with his murder. That's pretty bad. In the media reporting on this, I found it disturbing that the perpetrators of the break-in, and we can't call them alleged perpetrators because they were not residents of the home, so they did make entry into the home, expired in the home, but the news refers to them as victims rather than perpetrators or committed breaking and entering. And,
and when you take a look at the Huffington Post story, which Huffington Post is decidedly swayed on one side of the issue here, they are very quick to call them alleged teen home intruders.
Right, just misplaced youth, and
yes, and the let me give you the name of the article writer is Nina Golgowski.
Well, that tells us a whole lot right there.
It's interesting.
Articles on various Oklahoma websites, news station websites, which you would think have a much less left-leaning bent than Salon or Huffington Post, and that's where I was coming up with my impressions that they were calling them victims, and then some questions about whether or not this actually fits within the castle doctrine or stand your ground, and what's the legality of a 15-year-old, and just trying to at every point trying to demonize or insert that a little bit of doubt, just kind of like in that shyster lawyer, greasy Chris Cuomo sort of way, where you're trying to just create that shadow of doubt, to protect these 3 dead scumbags who were breaking into some motherfucker's house. I mean, you can't have that happen.
Well, and this is the thing. It all gets back to the individual responsibility, because what's going to come from one side of the issue is going to be like, oh, these people were victims of their upbringing or victims of the society in which they lived in, and this was their only way out. This wasn't anything that they chose to do. This is circumstances beyond their control. Well, the police arrested Elizabeth Rodriguez as the getaway driver. Okay, I'm pretty sure that as a 21-year-old, which she was more than old enough to make her own decisions in life. And yeah, when you just found out that 3 of your boys just got capped and dropped in somebody's house, I guess she probably didn't stick around.
No, I'm sure she bailed, and I mean there's neighborhood reports as to a vehicle exited the scene at a high rate after the gunshots, and I mean it's an AR-15. You got to think and you got to think about the kid, right? He's 15 years old. He's probably playing Nintendo or looking at porn or whatever 15-year-old kids do at home when they're by themselves, and this happens.
It says he was a 23-year-old man that used the AR-15 to shoot and kill the 3 masked teenagers.
I don't know where I got the 15-year-old then. Maybe
yeah.
15.
So there were boys ranging between 16 and 17 and an 18-year-old adult male. Because let's see, what is the age of majority in Oklahoma? I don't know. Maybe 16. Maybe it's 18.
Might be 16. I'm not sure.
Then if that's the case, we got 3 dead adult males.
Well, I'll tell you what. In other countries, those are, what are they? Military age males?
Oh, ma'ams. Yeah. Ma'am can be anywhere from 12 to 54.
Right. So and you're double dead if you got a Casio watch.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like,
but it's interesting because I'm looking at now the NBC News, the national NBC News page. Guess what they decided to slip in the story?
Assault rifle.
Oh, okay, very very close, very close.
Trump racism.
Even better, the AR-15 was the weapon used in mass shootings such as Newtown, the Aurora movie theater, and in San Bernardino, which has absolutely fuck all to do with this individual story, but just had to throw that in there.
Well, I mean, you have to know. I mean, this is a killing machine. I mean,
and
I'm surprised they don't make the AR-15 and 88 Magnum, dude. That thing shoots straight through schools.
The only way they could get better on this would be to call it the German railgun and have big swastikas painted on it. That would be the only way that they can make that story better. And this comes courtesy of Avalon Zappo from the NBC News team.
Well, I wonder if he holds a commensurate position with CNN's justice reporter position. Because I'm sure I haven't had a chance to listen to my beloved CNN at all today. But I'm sure if they are covering this, which I'm probably sure they're not, because they have to dedicate 20% of their time to reminding us that Trump said pussy.
Well, they actually have this on CNN's page. They do have a story. I have not seen it because, like I said, I have ditched satellite TV, but they have a story on their webpage, complete with a picture of the home, the picture of Elizabeth Rodriguez, the 21-year-old arrested who is an accomplice to the crimes, and basically they're talking about how this is possibility of bringing charges against the individual for killing the three. But whereas I've seen every other story says, yeah, they're probably not going to do anything because this is clearly a case of self-defense.
Right, and shame on you bastards at CNN for trying to insert your petty fucking agenda into this. I mean, I can't tell you how much I hate those people. I listen to CNN to substitute for coffee. You should both.
Yeah. I guess that'll get your blood pressure up.
Right. So I'm really not happy with that situation, and we've seen almost a renewed push, and I'd say combine that with the industry slump and layoffs that have been happening, and another round of layoffs actually happened. CCI and ATK in Oak, the large corporation that they control, ended up laying off 46 employees the other day. Now, these are people in management or middle management and customer service positions. But you kind of combine that with Remington laying people off and Federal laying people off. We're entering an interesting time in the market, and I'm sure you see it in your area. And I'll tell you what, I worked a gun show this weekend, behind the table, and was there for the full 2 days and the setup day. So I had a pretty good insight, I guess, this weekend as to what the current mood is. And I'll tell you, the demographics have changed for the buyers. So I mean, there's some kind of upheaval, turmoil in the market. And I mean, if we look just back at the recent events in the last 5 years, going back to the unpleasantness of 2013 and all, we saw a great big demand and a drop in the supply, with these manufacturers going balls to the wall trying to rebuild that supply, because they made everything they made, they sold, and they sold it a large percentage above what it would have been just months prior. Okay,
right?
You agree on that?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it was sold out, and I mean, and today we still see some of the effects of that with just some of the pure effects of that, like 22 long rifles. There are no CCIs at the Walmart near me. There's no CCI branded 22 long rifle. So I mean, that was something that was there. There was always, multiple value packs. That's not really the case. So, I mean, we're still kind of on that lower end of the supply line, and one incident could set it off. And honestly, I kind of thought it was going to happen this weekend, because if we look on Saturday night, Sunday morning, there was another bar shooting in Cincinnati where there were 15 shots.
15, yeah, 15, right?
15 shot and 1 killed. And I'd like to take just a moment to examine the dissimilarities between this bar shooting at the Cameo Lounge in Cincinnati versus what happened at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando, and look at the difference in media attention. Look at the difference in seriously, in the media attention. Look at the difference in social media outrage, and any mention of this from any sort of political authorities other than the mayor of Cincinnati, who once again tried to blame this on the proliferation of guns.
Yeah, and you're not getting any of that attention.
Right, and now this could be that it did not, number one, affect the same demographic that was attacked in Orlando, or I shouldn't even say attacked, that this occurred with, because I don't believe that Orlando guy. Come on now, man, that thing stinks like all kinds of stink. But
well, it was a gay bar.
Well, it was a gay bar, and that dude had been he worked for G4S. He'd made movies. It was a setup. I don't believe that it happened like it is. And then the FBI loses track of the dude's wife. The dude's wife just like slips the FBI's tail like she's like Jason Bourne or something. What the hell? Come on, no, that
James Comey was kind of busy.
Right, yeah. He had to be looking up Trump's Russian connections and setting up the wiretaps and shit.
No, but that didn't happen.
Right, it didn't happen because I forgot, because the NSA turned off the world wiretap for
they turned off the switch inadvertently.
Yeah, just for Trump. Everybody else still got recorded, but they turned it off for Trump.
No, but that's the interesting thing.
Seriously, because look at this thing. Look at the differences between what happened in Orlando and what happened, and look at who benefits. And straight up, let's talk about the Cameo nightclub. All right, number one, police say witnesses are unwilling to cooperate. Police are having trouble finding witnesses. That says something to me about the demographic right there, and it's decidedly more urban in flavor. Would you agree?
I would have guessed Chinese, but then I would probably
or Mayan possibly, but no, it's going to be a little more urban in flavor. All right, this will not fit the narrative that they wish to push. They have to somehow bring this back to some sort of hate crime and a need for more legislation to control how you think and speak, and something to get rid of the firearms. This is, quite frankly, it's a gang situation. It's a gang and crime situation.
Yeah,
It's not terrorism.
And those are the ones that are easy to ignore, because you know what? That's what happens in Chicago on a daily basis.
It doesn't help push an agenda.
Exactly. Well, as we say, brown is the new black.
Right. And
that train left the DNC a long time ago.
I don't know. So anyhow, you want to hear about the gun show?
Yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, I'm going to tell you that it was about 500 tables.
This is pretty decent size.
I mean, it takes up a little convention center, It takes up the Terry Shamsey Convention Center in Robstown. We had, I would say that firearms and firearms dealers and, firearms accessories and related things were probably about 85% of the tables. The rest would have been, and they say 80 to 85, depending on what you define as, like, if you include like tactical backpacks and stuff, yeah, like 85%. But I don't consider the guy who's got like 12 tables of knives. He's not really gun stuff. Because it's like he's got knives and toys, and then of course, I don't count the lady selling lamps and jewelry and all that. But there seems to be a price war going on between some of the FFL holders, and almost bitter to a point. And there was some scuttlebutt about a certain dealer who was pulling some practices that the other dealers were not appreciating. And
so go into detail about this.
Oh, one of the dealers, he from an area. I'm not gonna give any names and burn anybody. But he's a dealer who at the shows, and he goes to every show every weekend. He will have 20 tables, and it's when I refer to the acres and acres of black plastic, that's the guy I'm referring to, or he's very representative of that statement. He's got also a regular shop. I've been to his regular brick and mortar shop, and I will not go there ever again. It's probably some of the worst customer service I've ever had, and not as a demanding customer or anything. Just like hey, do you happen to have one of these? Just all kinds of attitude that I'm not going to spend $40 on. At the show, he was finding out he was sending his people out, making them change shirts and looking at prices and copying prices down. And then he was coming down and knocking his prices to be $10 cheaper than everybody else's. And to me, all these things kind of add up. So like we look at the layoffs in the industry, the news talking about there's a drop in sales. This guy doing things like that, which, kind of to me is indicative of he's sitting on a hell of a lot of inventory. He's got to cut losses on.
Right.
They got to buy, that dealer's got to buy all those guns up front. Very rarely do the distributors offer credit, give you these guns on credit. So he's already put money out of his pocket on these things. He's got to get some of it back into there. And it's sometimes it's better to get, $8 back in if you put 10 back than not get the 10 at all, not get anything.
Yeah.
So,
something is better than nothing.
Right. And there was it seemed to be a smaller crowd this weekend, but a different type of people were at that crowd. And, straight up, there were far more like obvious gays. And I guess that makes me, bigoted for saying, like you could tell they were gay, but yeah, you could tell they were gay. And several lesbian couples and lots of like gay individual guys. And they had money and they bought quite a bit. And
do you think that they were motivated by the Pulse shooting?
I think they were motivated by the current media hysteria about Trump's getting ready to throw the gays and the blacks and the Mexicans over the wall that's being built with the bones of Muslims.
Oh, how we've heard this before.
Right. So, I mean, I really think that's what it was. And it was very interesting to see like a subset of people that come in and really don't have any kind of knowledge about this subject, but are very, very willing to ask questions and learn, and truly came in without any kind of preconceptions or I guess maybe prejudices or anything. They were willing to. They sat and they talked, and if you were willing to speak with them, they were good to share information and appreciate back and forth. That was pretty nice. And I sold quite a few of my buddy's collection over the weekend, so he did well. But he's private, and I don't know. It was a change in the market, and I see kind of some desperation amongst some of the FFL holders and some of the smaller shops. And honestly, I can feel their pain, because you look at some of the big box store ads, and yeah, it's easy for these guys to get cleaned out. Yeah.
Well, when you look at what the clientele was for the show in general, was it the the small population that owns the bulk of the country's firearms, or was this new customers, people who were newly motivated to take their personal safety into their own hands, or was
I'm
this
going to say
people?
like 30% is the same guys, the same faces of the same shoppers you see all the time. Same guys who've always got something cool to trade, or, you know, the guys who always, put a little bit of money away every month for the gun show to go out and, buy a new toy. You see those guys, and I would say of the remaining percentage, I would say there was a lot of fresh faces that are not necessarily firearms community people.
Okay. So I mean, at least it may be getting out to other segments of the public that may not necessarily, buy guns on the regular.
Right, and it's very interesting just that they've now decided to take the plunge. And I will say that I found that they weren't necessarily looking for the cheapest item, which, compare that to the time, back with the 2013 unpleasantness. There was a lot of people there looking for the cheapest item. Now, maybe that was because, prices were going through the roof, but there were some people that, I have this much, this is all I can spend. And over the weekend, they were like, oh, a price difference of, $150 between two different items wasn't like a deal breaker. They were actually looking for something that fit their purpose or whatever. So I found that to be interesting. And I don't know, man, things change.
Oh, well, I didn't get to go to any gun shows, although I did happen to take my 300 Blackout out this weekend, as well as this evening took apart and cleaned a new to me muzzleloader.
All right, so let's yap about that muzzleloader.
All right, so the muzzleloader itself is a Traditions Lightning, and it is a bolt action 209 primer muzzleloader in 50 caliber. This is a probably early 2000s muzzleloader, and it is not exactly what we would call state of the art, but it isn't exactly bargain basement either. This is probably a solid purchase at the time, and for a first muzzleloader for me, it is. I'm going to be happy with it. The way it actually came about is a coworker of mine decided that he was going to be getting out of the hunting game due to his spouse's preference of him not doing it. And he said, "Hey, since you've used this before, why don't you take it over?" So I, never look a gift gun in the mouth. You know what I mean?
Absolutely not. I mean, honestly, you're supposed to do a little dance and, thank the sky god for free guns.
Exactly. So we went ahead and I ended up going over to another coworker's house today, this evening, and we broke it down to its bare components, and we gave it a thorough cleaning, and went ahead and he explained the process of making it storage ready versus making it ready to fire, and then taking a look in depth at the components themselves. One of the things that a lot of people may not understand is, there are different type of ignition systems for the muzzleloaders. Like I said, mine uses 209 primers, and then, like I said, mine is fired with a firing pin. It's not a hammer and whatnot. So, this is it's almost like taking every single individual component of your modern centerfire bullet and breaking it down to an individual step of loading it manually. So this isn't a system that somebody's going to use to go out and, go do target practice on the regular with. This is something that is going to be expressly reserved for use during a big game season. Mine is a 50 caliber, so I'm shooting sub caliber bullets that have sabos with them. So this is, probably looking at 48 caliber bullet. And yeah, it'll take a deer, no problem. I'll probably be using 777 powder by Hodgdon, and we're going to go with 100 grains of powder. Looking to pick up some Barnes bullets that come already saboed, and that will be what I take into the woods coming this October or early November, whenever the season starts. And yeah, I'm excited. One of the things that I think is important for people to know is that you definitely need to maintain a muzzleloader in a much more anal retentive manner than you necessarily would do with a rifle of the same basic design.
What was the solvent you used, and when you got it, did you see any evidence of any kind of corrosion or of the
Right.
effects of the black powder?
Right. So, and this is one of those things that all muzzle loaders will have corrosive effects due to the primer and due to the propellant. Um, the 777 is a improved version on the Pyrodex, and then you go up from there to like Blackhorn 209. There's lots of different powders that are out there, but they all contribute to fouling, at some regard. Um, lots of lots of people have preferences about what to use or what not to use. Um, it's just a matter of what accuracy you receive with the combination of the bullets that you choose and the powder load. So on my specific muzzle loader, we took the barrel off the stock. We looked at the action. We made sure that the trigger was working well. Um, Made sure that that this thing was, it was fairly dirty. I will say that, that we had evidence of uh, some corrosion occurring in the barrel. Um, you know that's to be expected. It hasn't been cleaned since then. Um, but we went ahead and used. I think we started off using the Thompson Center. Basically, what it was solvent, and then from there we just kept running dry patches, kept running. Uh, we'd alternate between a dry patch, we'd alternate between the bore brush, go back to the solvent patch, multiple times. And then, the interesting thing that we did that I didn't think to do and I wouldn't have known to do was that hot water seemed to really lift a lot of the larger pieces.
Yeah, they say that actually soap and water, sometimes urine, and that helps with that corrosive process. And
Well, I don't know that I'm going to go ahead and urinate in my barrel. I don't.
well,
I don't.
what I'm going to say, well, it's happened in the, it's not unheard of, and it at one point, for in some areas, that was standard practice. Depending on level of poverty and availability of materials, you used what you had.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, the interesting thing that I think the thing that I took away from this was that number one, it is labor intensive. This is, like I said, this is not something that you're going to go shoot 50 rounds at, on a day and not spend a significant amount of time keeping it clean. This is not a center fire rifle system. Between every
Right.
shot, you do need to swab your bore, whether you run one wet and then two dry patches, uh, because what's going to end up happening is those bullets are going to be very difficult to seat at the back of the barrel all the way down to where the primer is going to ignite through the flash hole. Your breech plug, which is integral to the firing mechanism. The breech plug must be kept free and clear of any carbon or any kind of corrosive material that comes from the primer. You definitely need to make sure that there's a space in that breech plug to have that transfer of the flash, from the primer to the propellant. Uh, Also, making sure that you clean it to store it is differently than the way that you clean it to shoot it. You store it with the breech plug not exactly screwed in all the way tight. Uh, that's to prevent any kind of seizing, so that way it doesn't sit there and melt metal to metal. People lubricate the barrel with something called bore butter, and you're going to definitely want to go ahead and take that out prior to going ahead and shoot. So, lots of different things that may or may not be necessary to do with firing a center fire rifle. but you definitely need to do it with a muzzle loader.
All right, so let me propose a theoretical situation for you. You have decided to go out and go camping because you haven't spent enough time in your life laying in a field.
Laying on austere conditions.
Right. So in your less than palatial digs, you've decided to take this muzzle loader, and you're gonna spend the night in a deer blind or a hog blind, and you've loaded this rifle, and you are ready to fire it, and no opportunity presents itself. How long is that charge good for?
Well, basically, it depends on whatever your individual rifle has in terms of an ability to keep a tight seal. Um, certain bullets create just a super tight seal. Other bullets, you may need to continually pack with the ramrod just to make sure that they're as far down into the barrel to prevent any kind of escape of gas or any kind of powder loss. Um, Based on what my coworker and colleague told me today, he has a CVA Acura, which is one of the newer CVA models, and he said as long as he's got a bullet in there, it creates such a tight seal that all it lacks is the primer as a source of ignition, to have that considered a fully charged gun. He said that he could throw it over his shoulder, he could hold it upside down, and he wouldn't have any concerns at all about whether or not he's going to be able to fire.
Okay, so in that case, he would possibly load the rifle and then hold off on placing the cap in prior to shooting, cock it and then
Correct.
place the cap.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Based
All right.
based on what he explained, that firearm is not considered hot until it has a primer in it, because there's no ignition source for the powder.
But what I'm trying to say is, let's say you spend the night in a some kind of blind, a pop-up blind or something. It's a little bit humid out. You've loaded it at, say, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Will it be good by, let's just say, 9 a.m. the next day, or will the humidity have got to it and ruin the powder?
Theoretically, it should be good to go. However, every condition, every different condition warrants a different set of circumstances. The way he explained it to me was that what most folks do is, prior to even loading it, they will go ahead and test fire with a primer to make sure that they have ignition. And then they'll know what the conditions are for that specific day. And they typically won't go without, firing that thing before the end of the day. They'll have a safe backstop or something like that, because it's not safe to continually have that loaded. Never mind the fact that sometimes it's easy to forget whether or not you've already had
I'm not,
load.
suggesting that you store it, which kind of brings up an interesting concept of, what if you choose to use a black powder pistol?
Yeah, exactly.
Revolver. How long could you leave that loaded?
Yeah,
But
good,
I mean,
good
I'm
question there.
more for just ease of use. Do you have 4 hours? Do you have 9 hours? Do you have 24 hours that charge is good for? And I guess you're right. It would depend on the rifle, but generally, you'd say that,
I mean,
loaded it would be good for 24 hours.
I would assume so. I mean, and furthermore, I personally wouldn't go any longer than that.
All right, sounds interesting. All right,
I mean, the way I look at it is there are some folks out there that are much more intelligent on muzzle loaders than I am, and they may have a formula that's worked out according to the powder, according to the relative humidity, according to the seal that their bullets create in the barrel.
Okay, all right. Hey, so listen, we've talked about Henry before.
Yeah.
Henry firearms, and I'll tell you, looking around, I saw that Henry has decided to fill a gap that currently exists in the marketplace, and that gap is the lack of single shot shotguns, and that's kind of a time-honored tradition in the United States. It's kind of a traditional youth first firearm.
Right.
10 or 20 gauge, sometimes 16 or 28. Bigger boys sometimes get a 12, and Henry Firearms has decided to jump in and replace that or fill that hole, and they've got we've got a 12, a 410, and a 20 gauge, and they're coming in priced at $479.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, keep in mind it is made in the United States with American-made parts and American labor. How do you feel about that? That to me, that's a no-go. I can't
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah,
That price is not commensurate with its use or ability.
yeah, and and it's one of those things that when you talk about Henry, you go with what you know, and Henry does lever guns very well. I don't think that I could do something other than that. It's like why would I go with Mossberg for a rifle? That's not what their forte is.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll tell you what, Mossberg's rifles have improved tremendously in the past couple of years, and I'll tell you what, right now I'd rather go with a Mossberg rifle than a Remington rifle.
Well, I mean, and like I said, that's all due to production and the lack of quality control. But would you rather go with a Winchester Model 70 or would you rather go with a Mossberg?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's the price difference? We're looking at $700-800 for a Model 70, and $350 for a Mossberg.
Yeah.
And in the end, the performance between the two for the average shooter, especially for the new shooter just coming into this, the Mossberg is going to work perfectly fine for him.
Yeah. Well, hey, take a look at this. You remember a couple months back we talked about a burglary that occurred at the Worcester, or I guess not Worcester. I think it's called Worcester, Mass. It's the
at the Armory or something.
The Reserve Center. The
right,
Reserve
right.
Center.
There was some firearms stolen from there. Correct.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we had declined to say what we believe to be the official cause being listed, but we kind of considered it to be an inside job.
Yeah, I believe that was our conclusion, that it was somebody on the inside. It was not a breaking and entering sort of deal.
Right. So there's three guys who have now been charged and sentenced for the larceny. So yeah, this is it's good to see that the cops kept up the heat to find these guys, and then the prosecutors secured a conviction. Because I'll tell you what, there's a special place in hell for a thief.
Well, what was the grand total? Does it give in that article?
I went ahead and dropped it in chat. If I bring it up, it's going to start singing songs.
We're not playing any of that.
Yeah, that's so 57 months in prison as one of the individuals' lengths of stay at the Gray Bar Hotel.
That's a good long time for a dude right there. That will
57 months is 57 months is just a little bit more than 4 years.
That's a long time, dude. That's pretty close to 5 years. That's
he'll get time off. He'll get time off for good behavior, I'm sure.
I don't think it's any kind of fun to be in jail for that long.
Oh,
not by any means. I don't think it's fun to be in jail for like more than 6-8 hours.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what it is to be in there other than what it was when I was dropping prisoners off. I never decided to stick around and test the ambiance out.
I'll tell you, the food leaves something to be desired. The cuisine is not up to my normal standards.
It's not up to rigid standards.
No, it's we'll say it's not the Colonel's original recipe.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad.
Yeah.
Oh well. So
once again, at the gun show this weekend, I saw violations of the 4 rules of gun safety like crazy. So let's hit
all over. I'm sure. Yeah, please hit them up.
All right. So Rule number 1 is make sure that every firearm is unloaded before you handle it. You will assume that every firearm is loaded and ready to be used when you pick it up. And it actually happened at the show this weekend. A guy who was coming through looking to trade a pistol had made the comment that he had actually tried to enter the show with a loaded gun and presented a loaded gun to the officer at the door and proceeded to receive a tongue lashing and lose the ammo of his firearm, which is I think that's right. I don't think the officer should have given him a tongue lashing. I think the officer should have explained to him it was a first timer to the gun show, and considering that he did have a concealed weapons permit and was legally entitled to keep the firearm, concealed on his person, I don't think the cop should have been that rude to a guy who was there. But I mean, have to follow the 4 rules of safety. So you will assume every firearm is loaded until you visually and physically inspect and ensure that it is not loaded. Rule number 2 is keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction at all times. Now, considering it is a gun show and it's, closer quarters and all that, you're going to expect that. But, I mean, people will pick up a firearm that they're looking at and aim it at somebody else's head. I mean, that's just straight up what they are doing. And, oh, look, it's got a laser. Rule number 3, know what's the target, know what's beyond the target. Well, once you've placed that laser on somebody's head, well, what's it going to go through, right?
Yeah.
And rule number 4, which was just abused to no end, and honestly, it's not
the itchy trigger finger syndrome.
My God, some of these firearms they must have caused blisters. Keep the booger hook off the bang switch until you're ready to discharge the weapon. I can't even begin to give you a number. Any number I said would be a lie. Easily every other person that came to the table. And if it was a group of 5, sometimes it was all 5. So, yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, it happens, but thank God they're all zip tied and emptied, and I made sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I personally wouldn't be wanting people around my table. I mean, I know that when you go to the gun show, you got to get over that fairly quickly.
I got to give a shout out to my boy 8Hawks in chat. Ocho, you are correct. Dry firing the weapon not only makes me cringe. Dry firing the weapon without asking me will make me grab the weapon out of your hand and make you leave my table.
Give you the unsurreptitious invitation to leave.
You are gone. So yeah.
Oh, well. Well, I'll tell you what. 300 blackout works just fine on groundhogs.
I'll bet you that thing does. I'll bet you. They don't make really good groundhog armor.
No, they haven't figured out a way to get that stuff shrunk down in size. But I'll tell you what. It went right through that poor thing, and that thing flopped back into a hole to which it will never escape from.
Well, you know what you did? You just helped make some more, groundhog-based fertilizer. You are a healthy environment. Thank you, sir.
Yes, I'm an environmentalist.
Right.
Yeah.
What ammo did you use?
So this was the Walmart Remington marked box of Barnes ammunition, 125 grain open tip match.
How was the recoil?
Negligible. I mean, it's for a 30 caliber rifle in the AR platform. It was not like shooting a 308. I mean, just maybe slightly more than a 5.56.
Excuse me. Tell you what, at the show, looked at brand new AR-15s that are retailing from the guys with FFLs. You're looking at probably about $500 out the door, and guys carrying AR-15s in $1,100. So,
oh wow!
Still got that disparity between the new and the used, and people probably trying to recoup their losses on that AR-15 they bought in like April of 2013.
Right. Yeah. Oh well. Well, yeah. I mean, it was good to get out and shoot. The National Forest range will not open up until the 30th of April, so we're nearly a full month out from being able to just go out there and shoot for free. But hopefully I'll be able to go out to the land where I hunt and go set something up. But we've got turkey season getting ready to kick off in April. So, got to get out there quick, because otherwise people are going to be out there with shotguns looking to get rid of some thunder chickens.
I'll tell you what, I'd like to get me one of those all natural thunder chickens.
Yeah, from what I hear, and like I said, I have not had the opportunity
you
to
get one of those. I'd deep fry that thing. If you've never had deep fried turkey, I recommend it to everybody. Deep fried turkey is quite possibly the best way I've ever eaten turkey in my entire life.
Right, and like I said, this is not to be confused with a farm raised turkey, because a wild turkey is going to have all of its meat in the breast with very little meat in the thighs, whereas the farm raised turkeys are quite different.
Right, those are just hormonal monstrosities.
Yes, GMO goodness.
I'm telling you, you will never need to buy any kind of like healthcare or antibiotics ever again. You're going to get it all in that turkey right there.
Right. All right. Well, hey man, we are getting close to the end of the show. What are you looking to do next week for firearms related fun?
I think I'm going to try and get out and put a few rounds down range. I did get a chance to talk to Alan Morgan of Innovum at the show again, the 3D printing guy.
Yeah.
And I got to spend a little bit of time with him. And I got your grips that he said he was going to make, so I'm going to send those to you. And I think I'm going to try and head down and see if he can help me rig up something for a Kel-Tec rifle to put a sling on it.
Yeah, good call. Yeah. I actually did a little bit of firearms repair myself. Yesterday, I went ahead and replaced the fiber optic front sight on the SKB over-under 12-gauge shotgun that I have that is waiting for you to come take ownership of.
That is fine. That's awesome. Yeah, don't be trading that off for no.
No, no, that ain't going anywhere. So I went ahead and put in the new fiber optic sight. Easy enough. Install was just a universal mount. It needed to be done because, like I said, the other mount had cracked and the fiber optic was no longer anywhere visible.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna have to hook that sometime soon.
Cool, yeah. And then, like I said, news flash to our PrimerTime family. I may or may not be in the net next week or the week after, because as it happens to be, I will be moving, getting a new place in the local area. It's just another location, a little bit more feasible for raising a family. So, just put that out there ahead of time so I don't upset the family in chat. I may be or may not be out of the net.
You've got a headset. You can carry boxes and do the show.
Right. Yeah. It's going to be difficult enough.
Oh man, I don't envy you moving. So how much of this is going to be handled by Beacons and the government?
The government is not on tap for this one, but family has called and made arrangements with a moving company, and there's a lot of very strong university students with very weak minds that are willing to move the heavy stuff.
That'll work. That's way better than you moving the heavy stuff. Hey.
That's true.
Yeah, are they going to have to move the gun safe off the third floor?
Second floor.
Oh man, you're just cruel.
Yeah, well, that's what they get paid for, right?
That's right. That's why they make the big bucks.
Yep.
Well,
there we go.
Everybody, thank you for listening up. This has been UCY.TV, your home for everything you don't get anywhere else. Jules puts her heart and soul into this. Got a few spare shekels, throw them our way. Help us all out. Everybody stick around. There's a lot of good radio coming up next. Anti-media with those fine Southern gentlemen coming on next. Guys, love you. Thank you for sticking around. Do what the song says.
This is JJE.